In a quiet town, Irene Thompson is the perfect wife and mother in the eyes of many. She lives in a cozy suburban villa with her husband Harold and their 2 children. Irene is busy taking care of the family and the kids every day, and her life seems to be filled with love and responsibility. On the outside, this family is undoubtedly the ideal picture, and neighbors often praise Irene as a devoted wife and mother, while Harold is a gentle and caring husband, and the children are lively and adorable. However, despite the outward appearance of a perfect life, Irene hides some secrets that no one knows about. She loves her family, but she often feels a sense of loneliness that is hard to describe. Late at night, she sits in her study, staring at blank pages, her mind filled with confusion and struggle. Irene has never shared these thoughts with anyone, not even her closest friends, and no one has noticed the changes in her. She appears carefree, but she knows deep down that she is walking a path she never anticipated. All of this seems to be hidden behind the walls of this quiet house, silently waiting for an inevitable moment. Behind every smile, there could be a burden too heavy to bear, and this seemingly ordinary home is a mystery waiting to be unraveled. If you are also interested in these true suspenseful cases, remember to subscribe to our channel and join us as we uncover more little-known stories. In the upcoming tale, we will explore the hidden secrets of Irene's life and uncover the enigmatic truth behind her death. It was an ordinary evening when Harold, like usual, finished work and drove home to his warm house. The light from the garage window shone into the room, adding a sense of familiar comfort to the quiet house. However, when he opened the living room door, the scene before him froze him in place. Irene was lying on the floor, her face pale and her eyes shut, as if in a deep sleep. Some books and daily items were scattered around her, and the entire scene felt eerily quiet and still, without any sign of struggle. Harold's heart skipped a beat. He quickly stepped towards his wife and gently shook her shoulder, his anxiety and fear building up. "Irene, wake up!" His voice trembled, filled with anxiety and fear, but she didn't respond. His hand quickly pressed against her neck, but there was no heartbeat. Panic instantly took over his rationality, and Harold's fingers began to shake. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He dialed 911, his voice trembling, barely able to form coherent words. He quickly told the dispatcher, "My wife, she's gone. I don't know what happened." The paramedics arrived at the scene shortly after the call, and Harold anxiously awaited, his mind overwhelmed with dread. A few minutes later, the medical staff entered the room, checked Irene's body, and confirmed that she was dead. They exchanged a brief glance, as if in silent agreement, and then quickly exited the living room. The police arrived shortly after and began to secure the scene, starting their initial investigation. Though there were no visible signs of injury, Irene's death still seemed incomprehensible. The police noticed that she had fallen in the living room, with no signs of a struggle around her, and there was no evidence of a break-in. On the surface, everything appeared calm. However, this calmness concealed an endless mystery. Harold stood helplessly by, watching everything unfold, his mind consumed by one question: how did Irene die? The sudden tragedy left him lost in confusion and pain. The police's investigation was just beginning, and the truth seemed far beyond reach. After the police arrived at the scene, they quickly began the initial investigation. The living room was eerily quiet, and there was an oppressive, unsettling atmosphere in the air. The room had not been disturbed, and all the furniture was neatly arranged. None of the household valuables appeared to be missing. Everything in the house seemed to suggest an accidental, violent event. However, as the investigation deepened, the police began to notice some unusual signs. Irene's body was found lying on the living room floor, and the police's medical examiner carefully examined her body. Soon, they discovered a noticeable mark on her neck, a deep strangulation mark, clearly visible. This discovery immediately raised the police's suspicions. It was evident that this was not a simple accident or suicide. The medical examiner confirmed that Irene's death was not caused by an illness or an accident, but by external pressure leading to asphyxiation. The strangulation marks on her neck were consistent with those found in violent cases involving strangulation, indicating that she had been strangled by someone. This conclusion made the investigators more certain that this was not just a common accident, but a premeditated murder. The police began to re-examine the scene, looking for any other potential clues. Although the house had not been ransacked and there were no obvious signs of burglary, the strangulation mark made everything seem far more complicated. There was no evidence of a struggle, indicating that the victim had likely had some brief contact with the perpetrator before her death. The police quickly contacted Harold, asking him if there were any potential suspects or threats. Harold explained that Irene had been a gentle and kind wife with no known enemies. Their marriage had always been stable, with no apparent conflicts. He mentioned that while he had not noticed anything unusual about her behavior recently, he did not rule out the possibility that she had been involved in an unforeseen situation. The case soon became shrouded in mystery. Although there were no obvious signs of forced entry or struggle, the strangulation mark made everything more complex. With the investigation deepening, there was still no clear suspect or motive. The truth appeared to be farther out of reach than ever before. During the initial stages of the investigation, the police turned their attention to Irene's personal life. Behind her seemingly perfect family life, there was a shocking secret. Through delving into Irene's social circle and life records, the police discovered a previously unknown fact. She had had a secret affair with a man named Adam Reynolds. Adam was a local gym instructor who had met Irene at a friend's gathering. Through Irene's communication records and interactions on social media, the police found that they had frequent contact. This discovery complicated the nature of the case. Irene and Adam's relationship was not merely a friendship, and further analysis confirmed that they had maintained a long-term secret romantic relationship. In the years following her marriage to Harold, Irene had tried her best to maintain a harmonious family image. However, her relationship with Adam had clearly developed further beyond a simple friendship. The police found that they communicated often through texts and private calls, and there were multiple instances of them meeting in person. The police also noticed that Irene had mentioned Adam several times in her private journals, describing the emotional ups and downs in their relationship, as well as her struggles with her marriage to Harold. Once Adam's name came to light, the police quickly made him a key suspect. He was brought in for questioning. When faced with the police's inquiries, Adam appeared unusually calm, not panicking at all. He denied that his relationship with Irene went beyond friendship, stating that they had only occasionally met and never crossed any boundaries. However, as the police uncovered more about their connection, his attitude began to shift. The police presented information from Irene's phone records that showed frequent communication between them in the days leading up to the incident. By tracing their call logs and text messages, the police discovered that, in the hours before the murder, Irene had a lengthy phone call with Adam. This discovery made the case even more complicated. Why had they contacted each other at that particular time? What had transpired between them? As the investigation progressed, the police learned that Adam had repeatedly expressed his desire for Irene to leave her husband, Harold, and be with him. However, Irene had always rejected his advances, stating that she could not make such a decision. She didn't want to hurt her family, but felt unfulfilled in her marriage. With these new pieces of evidence, Adam's role in Irene's death began to come into question. However, he insisted that his relationship with Irene was not deep, and he had no involvement in her death. Despite his insistence, the police had already discovered their intimate relationship, and Adam's explanation was becoming less credible. Surveillance footage confirmed that Adam had been near Irene's house the night of the murder, though he denied being anywhere near her residence. As the investigation into Adam deepened, more secrets began to surface. Adam's involvement with Irene was not just as her lover. His emotional attachment had grown into obsession and control. He had repeatedly tried to interfere with her family life, even threatening her. If Irene had decided to leave Harold, Adam promised to provide her with a new life, but if she refused, his anger would be provoked. Through further investigation, the police found a series of emotionally charged texts and voicemails from Adam, revealing his jealousy and frustration over Irene's rejection. The police realized that Adam might not be innocent. He wasn't just Irene's lover, he was likely the greatest threat in her life. Although Adam continued to deny any involvement in Irene's death, the signs pointed to him as the prime suspect. Just as the police prepared to interrogate Adam further, a key piece of evidence emerged. A witness came forward with testimony that Adam had been seen near the path leading to Irene's house on the night of the murder. The case's progress made it clearer that Adam was likely behind Irene's death. However, Adam continued to deny any involvement, refusing to cooperate with the police's further investigation. The truth seemed to be slipping further into a maze of confusion. Was Adam truly responsible for Irene's death, or was there more to the story? This investigation was bound to face more challenges and unanswered questions. As Detective Mark Brown's investigation continued to deepen, the case began to reveal more hidden layers. Through further research into Irene and the people around her, the detective discovered a shocking clue. Benjamin Scott, Harold's colleague and friend, had secretly been in love with Irene. This revelation left Harold feeling both shocked and uneasy, as Benjamin had long been a part of his life. They had been friends for years, and Harold had never suspected that Benjamin's feelings for Irene had begun to change. At first, Benjamin's infatuation appeared to be a secret. He had never shown any signs of unusual behavior. As Harold's colleague, his interactions with Irene had mostly been in work settings, and the two seemed to have a normal, friendly relationship. However, over time, Benjamin's feelings began to manifest more clearly. What started as small gestures of care and attention soon grew into frequent appearances in Irene's life, not only at work, but also in her personal life. Whenever Harold was not around, Benjamin would reach out to Irene, trying to show his concern, and would often give her small gifts or offer to accompany her when she was alone. However, Irene did not reciprocate Benjamin's feelings and even made it clear that she did not feel the same way. Benjamin's rejection did not make him give up. On the contrary, as time passed, his emotions became more extreme. What began as a few minor harassment messages gradually escalated. Benjamin began following Irene on social media frequently and would continue to send messages and make calls even when she did not respond. Each time Irene rejected him, Benjamin's anger grew and he became increasingly out of control, repeatedly telling Irene that he couldn't understand why she wouldn't accept his love. As Mark Brown continued his investigation, he uncovered key evidence of Benjamin's actions. By tracing Irene's phone and computer records, he found several harassment messages sent by Benjamin, filled with threats and emotional blackmail. What was even more disturbing was that Benjamin had not only interacted with Irene online, but he had also started stalking her in real life. He had been spotted near her home multiple times, secretly observing her family and social activities. Irene had tried to hint at these actions to her friends, but since Benjamin always appeared polite and professional at work, no one took him seriously. However, on the day of the incident, Benjamin's actions seemed to reach a breaking point. Investigations revealed that he had been in the vicinity of Irene's home that evening and had even lingered near her house for a while. Although there was no direct evidence that he had entered her home, this behavior added another layer of complexity to the case. Mark reviewed security footage from the night of the incident and confirmed that Benjamin was indeed near the scene. Shockingly, the police did not immediately consider him a suspect. At that time, they were still attributing Irene's death to a crime driven by emotional turmoil related to her marriage, overlooking Benjamin as a growing threat. But Mark didn't stop there. He continued to investigate Benjamin as a potential suspect. By digging deeper into Benjamin's personal history, Mark discovered that not only was he emotionally dependent on Irene, but he also became increasingly unstable after she rejected his advances. There were multiple instances of Benjamin showing erratic behavior, including frequent conflicts at work. These signs indicated that Benjamin was no longer the calm and collected colleague he once seemed to be, but rather someone whose emotions had spiraled out of control. As the investigation continued, Mark became more certain that Irene's death was not simply the result of a complex emotional relationship. Benjamin's obsessive behavior and anger had become a clear danger sign. While the police had not considered him a primary suspect at that point, Mark believed that Benjamin's emotional instability and irrational actions were likely key factors leading to Irene's death. This neglected third party was a ticking time bomb in the investigation, waiting to be revealed as the ultimate truth behind the tragedy. As Mark Brown and the police delved deeper into the case, more and more evidence began to piece together a shocking picture. Through a detailed investigation of Aaron's final days, the truth was gradually revealed. Benjamin Scott's emotional issues, as well as his strong reaction to Aaron's rejection, ultimately became the root cause of this tragedy. After re-examining the crime scene, the police discovered key evidence of Benjamin's actions on the day of the murder. Initially, he tried to cover up his contact with Aaron, hiding his obsessive behaviors behind everyday social interactions, but the evidence slowly exposed his true motives. Based on witness testimonies and some surveillance footage, the police traced Benjamin's movements to the vicinity of Aaron's house on the day of the crime. At that time, Aaron had already made it clear that she no longer wished to maintain any relationship with him and had rejected all of his advances. However, Benjamin clearly could not accept this rejection, and his emotions and behaviors began to spiral out of control. That night, Benjamin's jealousy and violent emotions finally erupted. According to the forensic report, Aaron was strangled, a method that typically requires intense rage and determination. During the crime, Benjamin completely lost his composure. His anger caused him to lose control, not only killing the woman he loved, but also fleeing the scene afterward, in a panic, trying to cover up his crime. However, his escape was not flawless. The scene left numerous clues, especially on some small items inside Aaron's home, where the police found Benjamin's fingerprints and other DNA evidence. These pieces of evidence ultimately linked Benjamin to the case. His motive also began to surface. Aaron's rejection and indifference caused Benjamin's mindset to become seriously distorted, and his obsessive emotions and inability to control his jealousy led him to take extreme measures. In the course of the investigation, the police uncovered Benjamin's long-standing obsession with Aaron and his deep sense of loss over his unreciprocated feelings. This emotional emptiness and inner insecurity ultimately transformed into violence, resulting in this irreversible tragedy. With these irrefutable pieces of evidence, Benjamin was eventually arrested and confessed to the crime. The police investigation revealed a heartbreaking truth. A man, once a friend, had, because of excessive emotional dependency and unbearable jealousy, brought an end to the happy life of a family. Behind it all was an emotional entanglement that could not be escaped, which ultimately led to this ultimate tragedy. After the case was made public, the entire town was thrown into shock and confusion. Irene's death not only revealed the hidden secrets behind her, but also caused everyone to deeply question her husband Harold, her lover Adam, and her friend Benjamin. What once seemed like a harmonious family, friendly neighborhood relationships, and even the town's perception of her all became complicated and blurred due to this sudden tragedy. Harold, Irene's husband, was in unbearable pain as he confronted the truth of his wife's betrayal and death. As a man who deeply loved his wife, he could neither understand nor accept the hidden truths behind Irene. His heart broke while he was filled with confusion and anger. For him, this was not only the loss of a beloved wife, but the destruction of his entire family. Unable to bear the emotional turmoil, Harold decided to leave the town with their 2 children, hoping to start a new life far from the places filled with memories of Irene. For Harold, leaving was both an escape and the only way to seek redemption for himself. Adam, Irene's lover, although eventually cleared of any involvement in Irene's death, found his reputation utterly shattered. What was once a forbidden relationship kept secret from the public had now been exposed to everyone, tarnishing his name forever. Even though Adam was not directly involved in her death, the public's judgment and the pressure of the situation became too much for him to handle. To escape the burden of scrutiny, Adam decided to leave the town in search of a new beginning, hoping to leave the past and its scandal behind. However, Benjamin's fate was completely different. As the true culprit of the case, he was captured by the police and eventually convicted. During the trial, all the evidence pointed to his obsessive feelings for Irene and the violence they led to. His jealousy and violent nature ultimately caused Irene's death, and he had to pay the price for his madness. When the verdict was delivered, the residents of the town were shocked and saddened. While they mourned Irene's tragedy, they also began to reflect on their relationships and trust with each other. Irene's death, though revealing a complex emotional tale, left behind many irreparable wounds. After this tragedy, the town became quiet and heavy-hearted. Once warm neighborhood relationships, friendships, and love were all irreversibly changed because of Irene's death and the ensuing investigation. This once peaceful town, after the betrayal, jealousy, and violence that led to this tragedy, now bore many scars that could never heal. People began to examine their inner selves, rethinking trust, emotions, and boundaries between people, and Irene's story became a pain that they could never erase from their hearts.